Dr. Eid, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So for me, this is a great episode. I get to interview a friend of mine, someone who's probably the most generous person I've ever met in my life, who is a former high school basketball player at De La Salle, went on to become a dentist, owns multiple dental clinics now, and like I said, one of the most generous guys. So I'm glad to have you. We're going to highlight your story, try to, influence some kids into going into higher education and just, talk about yourself, man. So thank you again for coming.
Well, thank you very much. This is an honor. I remember meeting you 20 years ago. I've grown to love you as a friend, as a person.
Appreciate that.
I really appreciate
Thank you very much. And on paper, we're going to call you Dr. Eid, but no, I'm going to go with Rolly. I know you wouldn't sit here and let me call you Dr. Eid for over and over. So Rolly, like you said, we met a long time ago playing basketball at Canterbury, probably in the early 2000s. I would say probably 2001, 2002. Let's talk about a bit of your story, how you came to Canada. Were you born in Lebanon, and talk a bit about your upbringing and what it was like being a Lebanese Canadian growing up in Ottawa.
Yeah, so we're a family of 5. I have an older brother, younger sister, mom and dad. We immigrated to Canada in 1975. We're refugees of the Civil War that happened there in 1975. When we showed up, we were pretty poor, very poor actually. Okay. So also Canada was not the Canada that you would see today. Canada had a much different look back then. Racism was very, very serious. So we weren't very rich. So we grew up in pretty much in Vanier. And Vanier is not the nicest area of Ottawa at the time. We grew up on a French school called Glode. That was my elementary school. And
how old were you when you came to Canada? You were very
I was 6
young.
months old. So I was born in Lebanon, showed up to Canada, went to Vanier elementary school called Glode, and it was pretty violent. I had two friends of mine in 6th grade who were pregnant. I didn't understand what it meant to be pregnant in 6th grade.
Yeah.
My brother and I, we looked different. I remember a story where my dad showed up to a gathering, and the teacher asked how many people here speak one language, and everybody lifted their hand. And then he said how many people here speak 2 languages, and only a couple people lifted their hand. And then the teacher said how many people speak 3 languages, and my brother and I didn't want to lift our hands because we knew what would happen after school if we lifted our hands.
Yeah.
And the racism was pretty intense.
So what was your class like in the 70s as an elementary school student? Was it all French Canadian
yeah.
and very rare of
I was the only person of color in the school.
Okay.
So I believe the Italians immigrated before us, and it was me and my brother.
There were some Portuguese, I think, too, in Vanier.
Yes. So me and my brother were different, and after school we would pretty much have to run home. It was about 1.5 blocks away, but we would have to run for our lives because they would try to catch us, put us in the snow and snow job us, or put us up on fences and beat us up. So I remember running home one day because my brother was pretty much attached to the fence, and 8 guys were swarming him, and I was a young child. I was, I think, 6 or 8 years old, and when I got home, I'm like, Dad, like, you gotta help. Like, Tony's attached to a fence and he's being beaten up. So we jumped in the car, ran back, and we were just not we were different. We were immigrants back when Canada really wasn't exposed to multinationalism.
Yeah,
and so for me, seeing the struggles, I put my nose in the books.
Yeah,
I really was somebody who just focused on wanting to learn, educate myself, because I needed to do something to change my stars. Like, I really felt that I didn't want my life to be defined by what happened in Lebanon in a war I wasn't involved.
And what were your parents doing? I can imagine it would be very difficult for people to immigrate in later life. Like, what was your mother's occupation?
So my dad was a weatherman in Lebanon, but unfortunately his diploma wasn't translated or accepted.
Which is an unfortunate case for a lot of immigrants who come to Canada. That's a topic of its own.
That's right. So he had to do taxi.
Okay.
My mother, she did multiple jobs, but the job she eventually settled into, she was a teacher, but she settled into working for the government of Canada.
Okay.
So I would never see my dad because he would wake up at 6 a.m. and come back at 11 p.m. midnight.
Yeah.
And that's just what he had to do because he was the provider back then.
Correct.
And my mother also would work quite a bit. So for me, like I said, putting my nose in the books was what I did. I didn't really get into sports until high school.
But I can imagine your cardio was really good from running around and dodging people trying to chase you and whatnot.
Right. It was pretty scary because a lot of our recreations, you look at kids these days, their recreations, they go play. Our recreations was negotiating how we would beat up the English school that was right beside us. It was the French versus the English. And it was pretty violent. Like there was, rocks thrown, snow job. I don't know if you know what a snow job is.
I guess you're getting your head pushed.
Yeah,
into
you
the
get your
snow.
whole head pushed in the snow, and 8 people will jump on you. It's really quite,
Times have changed.
Times have changed. Yeah.
So let's talk about your high school. You said you really put your nose into the books, and your books was, studying was an outlet for you. But sports, how did you find sports? I know that you're someone who loves basketball deeply, and you still to this day, you're in your 40s and you still play basketball. And we'll touch on that later. How did you find sports, and what did sports mean to you? What was your relationship with sports when you got into high school? I took it a little bit more serious.
I remember the day I met basketball. Yeah, my friends and I, we were playing basketball, and I was invited to come, and I went. Part of us being a friend, social.
Yeah.
And when I got there, I was just a taller kid, so I was kind of this size when I was in 9th and 10th grade, and that's actually quite tall and large. So I was pretty effective at the game. Just having some success makes you enjoy whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
But then I started realizing, like, I really enjoyed it. I fell in love with it to the point where pretty quickly thereafter I seeked coaching. So I went to camps. I knew I went to the Carleton camp year after year.
Yeah.
And just worked on my game and my free time with me going outside.
And your parents were okay with that? I mean, I'm assuming, they worked hard and those camps costed money. So did you have to do a bit of negotiation to get them to buy in? Or?
Absolutely. But, every parent's looking for something to put their kid in the summertime. So
Correct.
That was what I wanted. And I really enjoyed it. I started playing very, very frequently.
Yeah.
Like looking for games. But again, Canada was not basketball specifically in Canada.
We're talking about the 80s here.
Yeah, we're talking about the 80s, maybe early 90s. Michael Jordan hadn't really come onto the scene yet, and I think he globalized the game.
Correct.
But before that, it was really quite niche.
Yeah, we were a hockey country. We still are a hockey country, but basketball's taken off. But I can only imagine what it was like back then. So, was it difficult to find different games? Were you going from court to court?
Absolutely. From our own high school, we'd get kicked out of the gym if we stepped into the gym. They wouldn't let you just shoot around or play.
Yeah.
Looking for games outside, especially in the 80s, was near impossible to find a game. I think, I would travel the city, to be honest. I would drive around, and hence I met you at Canterbury.
Yeah.
It's just me driving around saying, where could there be a game going on out there?
So what was your high school team like? Obviously, De La Salle is not known as a basketball powerhouse by any means, but, was your team any good? Did you just...
Not really, and again, basketball changed. A lot of misconceptions back then. I was, again, a taller kid. So everybody who had any kind of height back then, you're in the post or you're a center.
You're a center right
Doesn't
away.
Matter what. You can
6 foot center.
Yeah. If you can dribble, shoot, that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
If you're 6 foot plus, you go down and play in post.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is different now because that doesn't exist, right? You got guys who are 6'8" that are still playing point guard and whatnot. So it's a different dynamic. So I can imagine it was just a high school teacher that was your coach, right?
Yeah.
Someone who probably didn't know anything about basketball.
Basketball was still very much in its infancy, right?
Yeah.
So and you can see how back then and maybe even in the 90s, a lot of basketball was quite. It related very much to football. It was very physical.
Yeah.
Like you had to. Part of my game was developing an inside game, like a post play, where I was physical and throw myself around. The game demanded a physicality.
Correct.
And just to watch the transformation that I see these days, it's so much more skill based. They've taken away a lot of the physicality.
Yeah, but that comes too, and we talked a bit off camera, is kids are growing up and they're only playing drills. They're not doing one-on-ones. They're not playing American. They're not playing outdoors. There is a less of I guess people don't want to get hit. People don't want to, they want to look pretty. They want to look nice. They want to do their step back jumper. So the game has definitely changed. And people who grew up playing in an outdoor setting had that rough mentality because number one, it was rough. Number two is you're probably going to get into a fight, especially if you're going to a different court that you don't belong to. So looking back, what was your overall, you talked about people bullying you and whatnot when you were younger and having to, but basketball, was that an outlet to meet new friends, people that you may have not been friends
100%,
with?
Absolutely. Most of my friends these days have come from basketball.
Correct.
Right. I mean that's pretty typical. You make friends in some of the interests that you have and you share. But basketball is really one thing I like to encourage everybody to do is when you walk into a gym or even a court, man, look at people and say hi. They're human beings.
Correct.
If you say hi, you're going to meet the most incredible people in your life.
And you might find a partner to train with. You never know what can happen.
Yeah. So after my divorce, I'm just going to fast forward a little bit to a really cool story I think everybody can learn from.
Yeah.
I went to play, again, I was 40 years old, so that was just a little while ago. I went to go play basketball at Lansdowne. It's an outdoor court here in Ottawa.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing really well that day because a lot of the emotions were still quite raw from a very traumatic event in my life.
Yeah.
And I was sitting on the sideline. This incredible man sits beside me and he's like, hey, because he saw I was pretty upset. He's like, hey, man, like, what's going on? What's your name? Hey, I'm Rolly. What do you do? Oh, I'm a dentist. Like, oh, that's so cool. My grandfather is Rolly, the dentist. And so just like that, this person, who's now known as Ryan, him and I have become like incredible friends. He's built my house. He built my house with the basketball court.
Nice.
So, this is somebody I had no idea who he was. And just through basketball, just sitting there, you can see the kindness of people and you can look for that. You can, again, say hi, talk to people.
That's a good point. Yeah, because a lot of our friends and people that we're in contact with are people that we met through sports, and we have a bond, and it's a bit of a brotherhood. People that you blood, sweat, and tear with and whatnot. You have that bond, and it's a lifetime friendship. And you mentioned something which we're going to come back on. You have a basketball court in your house, so we're gonna touch on that. You talked about school being an outlet for you as well.
Yes.
You wanted to change your stars. You mentioned growing up as a refugee from Lebanon and in a tougher situation living in Vanier. How did you decide that you wanted to get into dentistry? Was that something you had your parents had forced on, being a Lebanese kid, your parents always want us to be doctors or engineers or something, right? Was that something they pushed on you or something you found by yourself?
Every parent who's an immigrant wants his child to become one of three choices. You have the choice between being a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer.
Exactly.
Everything else is off the table.
Yeah.
But
you're a letdown if you didn't do.
You're a
those
letdown,
three.
right? No. But what I was really 8 years old. I know this is a bit cliche, but I was 8 years old when I met my dentist, when I started to wake up to it. Yeah. And she was just awesome. Like she I was curious, and she would let me participate. She even let me volunteer, like to help out. So I would go on the weekends or whatever. I'd say, hey, can I help you out? I'd like to learn. I may one day want to be a dentist. I'm super intrigued by what you're doing. And she's like, absolutely, come. I'll show you what I can show you.
And who was this dentist?
Dr. Cassis. Funny enough, she came back to me just recently. She's like, she moved on from her practice. She wanted to work with me. So again, small world, right? Where you make friends with pretty much anybody you could say hi to.
Nice. So that's awesome. Mm-hmm. So you had that background where you said you volunteered and you were hands-on. So you're graduating from high school. What was your path like? You wanted to get into dentistry. I think you moved. I don't believe there is a school that you can go to in Ottawa to become a dentist.
And that's the thing. Like, so in Ottawa, Ontario has London and Toronto.
Okay.
So both of these require you to do an undergrad.
Okay.
So I did my undergrad here in Ottawa in biochem, and I applied to a bunch of schools. But the school that I got into was UDM, Université de Montreal.
Okay. And what were your grades like?
They were fantastic. Well, they have to be. Well, they were fantastic in high school.
Yeah.
In university, it is much harder.
Correct.
And it's very competitive. But in order to get into dental, medical, law, you're going to have to do relatively well.
Correct.
It's very competitive. So
what was it like moving to Montreal? I guess you said you got accepted to go to university.
Yeah, you're scared at first. When you're younger, you're scared.
Were your parents on board, or I guess when you say you're becoming a dentist, they say, okay, go.
Yeah, of course they support you. But this is a new adventure. Like, I've never been away from home.
Correct.
So going to Montreal was scary at first, but again, you meet people, you say hi to people, you meet people, you make great friends. I loved it, man. 4 years away from home really taught me to be more independent. It taught me to follow my dreams and come back stronger than ever, and that made me mature quite a bit. I also met at that time my fiance.
Correct.
We got married, so it was amazing. Like, I highly recommend, if you can leave your city to go study somewhere, you'll gain a lot of maturity and a lot of life.
For sure. And you mentioned that you did play basketball. You continued to play basketball while you were there?
Well, pretty much throughout my whole life. I don't think I've ever not played basketball. Except when I got hurt. And frankly, I got hurt quite often.
Yeah.
I stopped for a few years. I got shot in the knee. That took out my knee for about 4 years. I came back to the RA Center, which
I'm going to tell a story about later on once we get to that point.
We've played for 12 years, where you and I played together for quite a while.
We won a championship there. So you graduated, you became a dentist. You know, we're gonna fast forward. You know, you've had multiple dental clinics yourself. You know, you've always lent a hand to people who needed your help. You know, everyone talks about you as a super nice guy, right? So
Thank you.
what was it like? What's it like being a business owner? You know, not only being a dentist, but you're a business owner. You have some responsibilities. You have a lot of staff. What was that dynamic like, right? Were you able to take things that you learned in basketball to the business world?
Of course. I believe that in order to be a successful business owner, you have to inspire and lead and have good direction with the people that you're working with.
Correct.
Like anything else, everything in life comes full circle. So if you treat people well, they'll remember that. And if you treat people poorly or have any kind of a egotistical approach, they'll remember that as well.
Sure, yeah.
So I've always treated the people I've worked with like gold, you know. Much respect to everybody. I understand that they're working with me to get to whatever goal that we're getting. So I've never not, and you can see by our interaction, I've never not showed respect or treated people like that.
That's awesome.
And it's come around to really help me because all the offices that I've ever worked at and owned, the same people come around and say, hey, can I help? I want to join. You're the only person I'll ever work for.
Which says a lot.
Yeah. So it is great, you know, and a loyal following of patients because, again, it's not about the money. It never really was about the money.
Yeah, I wanted to ask that. I guess you said that you had a passion for dentistry, or it intrigued you. Did you look at the money side? Was that ever a factor at all?
Of course. I mean, you can have a passion, but as a job, you certainly want to be remunerated for what you do fairly.
Like, but did you keep in your mind that you wanted to kind of take care of your family? I know that you're a very generous person. Was that something that was embedded in your mind when you were becoming a dentist, or was really just about having a career that you can be, you know, long-standing and as well?
I never wanted to be anything else. I got to be honest. It was so easy. Like my vision from since I was 8 years old. Okay. I just wanted to be a dentist. I've literally kept saying it to everybody. Like I don't want to be a doctor. I don't want to be nothing. I just want to be a dentist.
Nice.
So for me, I had that laser-like kind of approach to it, and it worked out. Thank goodness it worked out because I don't know what I would have done if I wasn't a dentist. That's all I ever wanted to be, you know?
Yeah.
So
I mean, we have a lot of people that we talk about and it says, you know, you got to find your passion. So it's very lucky, and you're a very lucky person, I guess, or a determined person that you found your passion early on. You talked about playing in men's leagues, and obviously, man, I've talked to people who played professional, but you know, a lot of us that were high school stars end up playing in men's leagues. And I'm going to tell a story about, you know, we met each other at the Canterbury outdoor court, you know, and that was back then outdoor basketball was everything. We used to play. I was young at that time. I was probably grade 10, grade 11. My brother was, you know, a little bit older than me. My brother used to, you know, tag me along. I would play with him. At that time, my brother was, you know, multiple time All-Star, one of the top players in Ontario, Ottawa. So great time to meet you. I remember you drove an Infinity. You were a dentist at that time. It was great to play outdoors. But fast forward a couple of other years, we bumped into each other again at the RA Center. I don't tell people this story very often, but RA Center is a weird league, right? You can't just join in as a team. You kind of have to be invited, and then you got to try out. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm the most amazing basketball player, but I hold my own. I'm decent. I went to that practice. I'm more of a high IQ player, right? Like I like to play. It was a really low quality players. I mean, I'm just going to say it up front. And there was a tryout. I played, you know, if I have a guy beside me who's open, I'm going to give up the pass to make that guy shoot. In the end, I didn't get picked. And there was a guy that I knew that never played basketball, ended up getting picked. So I had a very bitter, and I'm dragging this on for long, but I had a very bitter taste in my mouth. So then when we bumped into each other, I used to rent the court at Dempsey, where I'm sure you paid for this up front. You're super generous, and we play. You invited me back, and then we joined that. So talk about how, and then I came, and then we won that year. Let's talk about how you stayed involved in through men's leagues. You even ran your own tournament. You called it Reba. So let's talk about maybe a little bit of Reba, and then we'll talk about how you stayed involved in basketball.
Okay, so in regards to Reba, a lot of my friends at high school, we were very active, and a lot of our fun was organizing events. We were actually quite competitive too. So basketball was primary because I was pushing it. Okay. Not so much so that they truly loved basketball. There was a couple that did, but I was a big pusher towards that game. So I organized this tournament called Reba.
And what does it stand for?
The Roland Eid Basketball Association. Basically, it's pretty much everybody I knew, and I brought all these people together once a year to do a basketball tournament, which is a one-day event that we'd have.
And you'd give out awards, keep stats, and all that stuff.
So we started off pretty informally, And the tournament grew and grew, and I started buying trophies that were legacy trophies that I kept year after year and plaquing them and putting who the winners.
I even heard there was a massage therapist and physiotherapist.
Yeah, and then friends and their wives and children would come, and it was packed. Like the sideline was packed of family. And I'll tell you a funny story. You know my cousin Justin.
Yeah.
He was playing, and it got so dramatic. His mom was on the sideline on her knees praying that he would win the tournament. So I don't know if you're a ref and you're there and that this mom is praying on the sideline, you may give a call that you shouldn't normally be giving,
Yeah.
So it got really, really, people enjoyed it. They loved it. And I love to hear that the tournament then transcended into Cardish,
which Kerry took on, and Kerry said he got the idea from you, which was amazing. I guess a nice thing for you because you were able to inspire other people to continue this.
Yeah, what a great way to bring friends together. People oftentimes need a reason to leave home and leave their daily lives to go. Remember that they have other circle of friends and family that want to see them, miss them. So they need a reason to come. Basketball was definitely a glue and a reason to push people out of their homes.
Yeah, for sure. And you don't lose that passion, right? You might lose your athleticism, but I think the passion grows because you see, what if, you watch NBA basketball, you still have those hoop dreams and whatnot. So it's good that you're talking to someone that's, the most case scenario of a basketball player. You're not going to make it anywhere. You're going to play high school basketball. If you're really lucky and really good, you're going to play university, but it's very rare that you play professional. So you have a basketball court in your house.
I do.
And when I talk about a basketball, you have a legitimate half-court basketball in your house.
I do.
How, number one, obviously you've been fortunate and your hard work has paid off and you've been, as a dentist, it's a lucrative business. But how did that vision come about?
Okay, so remember that person I mentioned to you, Ryan?
Yeah.
Again, him and I would, after that meeting, we started to hang out, work out, talk dreams. He was an up-and-coming home builder.
Okay.
And at that time,
this was just a random guy you met.
A random guy I met playing basketball at Lansdowne, right? Remember, say hi to people.
Yeah.
It's really interesting who you're going to meet. So we would start to hang out. We became friends. And then he was doing some contracting work, construction, but he hadn't yet built a name for himself.
Okay.
So here I was through the divorce. I was living in a condo, but I wanted to show my kids that, adversity in life does happen. Like bad things can happen or things that, you don't necessarily foresee that are negative that can arise, but you shouldn't just give up to that. Sometimes that could be a call to like, okay, I need to do something. And I wanted to show them that I'm going to do something about changing, again, our stars.
Yeah.
So I decided, okay, I'm going to build a house. And I asked Ryan, I'm like, hey, Ryan, would you mind building me a house? He's like, yeah, cool. I've never done it before, but sure, let's do it. Let's talk about it. I'm like, but I got to tell you something. I want a basketball court.
And I remember when you told me this. I remember we went for lunch somewhere. I can't remember where it was, but you had told me that I'm building a basketball court. And I just thought like, okay, yeah, you're building a basketball court. You showed me pictures and said, okay, yeah, for sure. In my mind, I didn't think about it, but let's go in how you basically said that I want to build a house with the basketball.
Oh yeah, I remember we were literally sitting in my condo, him and I, like we're on the computer. I'm like, yeah, I can build you a basketball court. I'm like, no, you can't. I'm like, no, I can really build you a basketball court. I'm like, okay, let's go online. So we went on the internet and we started looking at homes with basketball courts. Okay. And we got inspired. I'm like, okay, then done. Do it for me. He's like, okay, I'll do it. So he took on the job, killed it, built me a beautiful home with a basketball court. And ever since then, most weekends I have you guys over to play some 3-on-3. Yeah,
which is amazing, right? And even not only that, but you're open, you're super generous in the sense that you allow people to come into your home pre-COVID. The door was always open. Even sometimes there would be younger children not younger children, but older teenagers that would come. I mean, we're grown men, right? So you get that, and you get people that are mentoring them and whatnot. So really interesting. I mean, how has that dynamic kept you into the game and not only probably allowed you to meet more and more people?
Of course. So what's amazing is, so people bring friends and family. Yeah. Even just through that. Like I've been blessed. The Globetrotters came over to play in my court. Yeah. Like not just the Globetrotters. We're talking like 2 amazing Globetrotters and other professional athletes that would never have met. Bruno from the Red Blacks. Okay. Christos from the Oakland Raiders, defensive lineman. Like these people are like in my home.
Correct.
Like, you understand, this is like, I'm a little bit starstruck sometimes.
Yeah. And you see the physical abilities that these people have.
Yeah. So to be honest, a few times I retract myself from playing. I actually just go upstairs and watch people play.
Yeah.
Like, the level is that high. But again, it's such an honor to have these like this opportunity to host friends and families. People now show up with, you know, their children, their wives, their partners. Like, it's truly, it's an incredible.
You know, there's a group chat where people, you know, you send out who's in this weekend and whatnot. So yeah, it's definitely like I touched on, you don't lose the passion for sports. You don't lose that passion. You know, I asked this question to all my guests. If you can look back, and you've touched on it a bit, but if you can look back as an athlete and give yourself some advice when you were a teenager, what advice would you have given yourself as a younger athlete?
If you really want something, you should definitely try to go get it.
Yeah.
Like, even in basketball, but just in life, you know, when you said I've always wanted to be a dentist, things, yeah, sure, there's luck, whatever. But if you want something, you'll generally you'll increase your probabilities.
Correct. If you have a set goal of what you want to be,
yeah,
you'll work.
So I would encourage yourself, even in sports, right? If you say, okay, I want to be a great basketball player, well, great. That's a good place to start. Now, what are you going to do about it? So, what are you going to do about it? If you want to be a basketball player, well, go play basketball. Go have fun. If you want to win, then start learning the game. Do what needs to be done to win. You know, I think you and I won together. Part of the reason why we won that year, if you remember that year, we both really wanted to win that year.
Yeah.
You know, we both put aside our egos. I was a pretty egotistical person growing up, right? But that year I set aside my ego and I did what I needed to do, which was basically defer to you and Peyton and
yeah, exactly.
And
just to give some context, I touched on the story. It was an RA men's league, which isn't, you know, a top league in Ottawa. It's a middle league in Ottawa for basketball. You know, you brought me on and you told me to come on the team. We met some great players. You know, I met Adam through there, who I still play basketball to this day. We had Peyton, who was fresh out of, you know, university, went to Bishop's. So we had a good team and we ended up winning, which was a cool thing. And then school. I mean, you were a smart guy though. But if you were to look back, you know, would there be advice, or if you can done something a little bit different?
I think I should have paid attention more in class and went more to classes. As a child, as a teenager, or, you know, young man, you sometimes take for granted these really cool moments in your life. You tend to skip the day, or, you know, forget what it is. Like, events happen, and you'll look back at the events years later and say, oh, wow, that was a really cool time.
Yeah.
At the moment, though, you don't really understand how cool it was.
Yeah.
Right? It's just another day. But now, like, I look back at my time in Montreal becoming a dentist.
Yeah.
I was like, that was a really great part of my life.
Everything just goes by so quickly, right?
Yeah. I wish I could tell myself, just relax that day, enjoy this day.
Yeah.
It's going to be a great day, and you will only realize that much later.
Yeah, it's good point. Question for you. You know, you touched on earlier your childhood, how it was a bit difficult, right? Like you dealt with bullying, and you just mentioned how, you know, you wouldn't have changed certain things, but how did that shape you as a person looking back, right? Like, you know, it's one thing to say that I was getting chased by people and whatnot, but how did that really define you as a human being, right?
It gives you good and bad. So the bad is it makes you very tough, and I mean that in a good and a bad way. In a good way, you become stubborn and push forward in your goals more so because you're highly competitive. You've resisted aggression or bullying, like you said. In a bad way, though, it can desensitize you. Like it can take away some of the necessary emotions that you need to just be more aware, to calm down, to not be so centric.
Yeah.
You go into a almost like a personal cocoon where you start to shut out the world because it's almost like a traumatic reaction.
Yeah, you touched about how you went and studied at home, and that was kind of to get away from things.
Exactly. So it toughens you in a good and a bad way. It'll make you more driven, but it'll also desensitize you to that human side where you can let loose and trust again.
You also touched on how your parents worked a lot, right? And, you know, maybe you didn't understand that, but also looking back now, did that build your character in the sense of being a hard worker, building businesses and whatnot? I know that I know that your father passed away a couple of years back, which was a difficult time.
Yeah.
Looking back, how did that really? And I'm sure you look back now and you have joy, right, of what they gave you and what they sacrificed to give you.
Yeah, like I don't know anything but work. At times, you're overwhelmed and you'll hate work, but now I say to myself, working is a blessing. Like when you can go to work, not that I've ever not went to work. I actually am a little bit of a workaholic to be honest. But when you can go to work, it truly is a blessing. Like it's an opportunity for you again to leave home,
correct,
to go do something productive. And yeah, it may be hard, it may suck, but at the end of the day, like you feel like you've done something with your time and self, and you've actually helped people. And that to me is very rewarding.
Nice. I guess my last question before we end off things. You got a kid in high school right now who's thinking of becoming a dentist, right? Or their parents are pushing them. What would be the most realistic way to get into it? To have a proper blueprint to become a successful dentist. To maximize their not only their studies but to become a good dentist. What would you say to that 16-year-old that's really thinking about becoming a dentist?
If you want to become a dentist, make sure that you are passionate. And I know that's a bit cliche again, but man, you're going to be doing this every day, hours and hours a day. And to be fair, you're going to carry it home too. Like this is a profession, like any other profession. It's people's health, people's lives. There's a lot of rewards, but if you don't like it, if you're not passionate about it, if you don't truly enjoy it, it can be quite a challenge to go into it. Like there's other things that can make more money. If you're after the money, to be fair, like dentistry may not be.
It is a lucrative.
It's fine. It's lucrative, but there's a lot of things that are more lucrative and maybe less work and less responsibility. So I love it, and I'll tell you what's great about it. So if you're 16 years old right now and you want to be a dentist, do you like being with people? Because you're going to be around people all the time.
And different people, right? Everyone is completely different.
So if you're an introvert or you don't enjoy people, forget about it. Are you a attention for detail? Again, you're working in the millimeters and micrometers, like in your workspace is like microscopic. And so are you somebody who enjoys that, like working fine detail? Are you somebody who can handle other people's stresses? Because people will, when they first meet you, practically everybody hates the dentist.
Of course, yeah.
Nobody's like, oh man, I love you. I can't wait for you to do this to me. Everyone's like, no, I truly am unhappy to be here, but I have to be here, correct, right? So you're dealing with negativity right off the bat. So are you okay with that? Are you able to rebound that into a positive to make people comfortable? If you're not, you're putting yourself, in a pretty tough position. And finally, like, truly enjoy helping people. And I say that again, cliche, but there's nothing cooler than to watch people cry because they had, and Osama, for example, he has no teeth in the front. Now he has beautiful teeth because I fixed his teeth. Well, that day, he was emotional, and so it's quite rewarding.
Yeah, it's definitely a changing, like a life-changing experience, right?
Yeah.
So no, it's
there's quite a bit of reward, but you have to be passionate. Like you have to love what you're going to do, no matter what it is that you're going to do. It's not about the money. You can make money honestly doing any and everything.
Correct.
Right. If you're passionate, if you're great at what you do, you're going to be rich. People are going to want your trade, your skills. So, but dentistry is a very unique skill that if you have to enjoy.
For sure. No, I appreciate your time, Rolly. I know you talked about, bringing joy to people. I think you're probably too nice to people, and you've probably given more than people deserved. And I say that in a good way, just from your generosity.
Thank you.
How you are as a person. You try to live things in a positive way. I've been fortunate to know you for a long time. You always have your door open. Anytime we needed to play basketball or anytime you wanted to, whether it was food after the fact, you're just always so generous, and it's brings people together. So it's great. It's always nice to hear stories of people who went and played pro, but it's also great to hear stories of, just regular Joes who continue to play basketball, give outlets, because it's tough. It's tough to find gym space as you get older, right? Kids have priorities, and it's cool to have an outlet. So I appreciate your time. I'm glad that we're friends, and we're probably going to continue to play basketball, even though we're going to be slow and much older. But I really thank you for your time and sharing the wisdom today.
Likewise, and thank you very much for having me.
Appreciate it.